If I could have your attention, I want to welcome everybody. Yeah. Can you hear me? I don't know how to do that. I used to have a command voice, but my command voice has sort of gone by the way, like the rest of my body. I'm glad we have a young ranger here today because us old rangers are getting on the backside. So the reason they have, my name's Mike Williams, the reason they have an old guy up here at the Young Business Leaders Breakfast is because when young business leaders started, I was a young business leader. Actually, I was a young business apprentice coming right out of the Army and trying to learn something about the business world. And so one of the reasons that I'm here is that really you can survive. So this is my 50th year with the Northwestern Mutual, and I've been privileged to be mentored by many men in this group. And in fact, the man who introduced me to our speaker today is an older ranger than I am, and Doug Haskew, who has a couple of tables down here. So I've been being chiseled on for a long time. But the reason we have this, Young Business Leaders, is a non-denominational, nonprofit, faith-based ministry designed to reach the business community in the Birmingham metro area. And the way that's been done is by having events like this where we hear speakers talk about how they've been used. Good morning, Sheriff. And there's my boss coming in, so I'm glad to see him. But one of the reasons that we're here is to be encouraged and challenged and edified. And I think you will be this morning. Let's pray and thank God for our meal. Father, thank you for this morning. I thank you for each person who's here. Father, I thank you for the breakfast that you've provided and those who have worked to serve it and cook it. Father, I thank you for this event. Thank you for our speaker, for Jeff Struecker. I pray that you would bless him. Bless each of us, Father. Give us ears to hear and hearts that are open to your message, that we might be transformed for eternity. In Jesus' name, amen. Just a couple quick things before we move on, and that is, at each place you have a response card or a commitment card or a comment card, and we would ask each one of you to fill that out. I know some of you will have to leave early, so if you do, fill it out, and as you leave, you can drop it in the box. If you want additional information about young business leaders or about some of the things that you hear this morning, then please let us know. The way young business leaders worked, and the reason I was so blessed to be a part, is that they have mentors who help mentor younger guys. And then they have small groups that provide encouragement and accountability. And I want to say one personal thing. My dad's mother died when he was 2 years old. His dad deserted him. He was raised by grandparents. God gave him the opportunity to go to college on a football scholarship at Troy State, which just happens to be where Jeff graduated from. After his freshman year, he got drafted into the war. And his commanding officer in the military led him to Christ and discipled him for 4 years in the States and all through Europe. So I got a dad who was the exact opposite of his dad. Instead of a man who deserted his family, he was faithful to my mom for 60 years. I never heard him use a profane word. He was a man of honor and integrity. Now, he was a linebacker, a Golden Gloves boxer, and a military police officer, and he beat my bottom when I was disobedient. But he did it in love, to correct me, never to punish me. So I had that kind of a role model. So what was I like? I had a filthy mouth, a bitter, angry spirit. I got kicked out of a fraternity. I almost got kicked out of the university until I was 19 years old. and Christ turned my life upside down. So the reason we're here today is God has no grandchildren. Every person has to make their own choice. And I know that when we're taking guys to jail, and I ask them, it's never their fault. There's always somebody else's fault. And so when I would say, did you do anything wrong? Well, I knew those guys were up to no good. I said, yeah, and so if you hadn't gotten in the car with them, would you be riding in the back of my car right now? No, sir. I said, well, you have a choice to make. You can continue on this road and end up dead or in prison, or you can choose differently and live a life that will be a wise life and never be here again. So guys, I hope that as you listen this morning, this will be a challenge and encouragement to each of you. And I appreciate you being here. So I want to introduce Andy Martin. Andy's going to come up and have a special recognition and appreciation to express. Thank you.
Well, Mike, like you, I have, since I was 22, had the privilege of being part of Young Business Leaders. And the greatest privilege of my life was getting involved in a small group study. And served in there a long time. They asked me to be a board member. So today, on behalf of the Board of Young Business Leaders, we want to talk about our theme for 2023 is the path to courage. And if you think about the speaker that's going to speak today, he has a platform because he personified courage. And I'm not going to give away any of his secrets to his talk, but I did a little research and watched some interviews with him, and he said in it, I was terrified when I had to go do what essentially made him famous. He used the word terrified. So that's what's interesting to me. Courage. The people that show courage do have fear. I remember I had the privilege right after after September 11, 2001, hearing Rudolph Giuliani speak about 2 years later. And someone asked, do you think those first responders had fear as they were rushing into the towers that led to their demise? He said, I do think they had fear, but courage is doing what you are trained to do in spite of your fear for something bigger than you. So today, several businesses in town wanted to support our law enforcement and our veterans to say thank you. And they've asked me to speak on behalf of that. And if you think about this, last night some of the board members and small group leaders had dinner with Jeff, just brief conversation. These guys never see themselves as heroes. He said what they always say. The heroes are in Arlington. I came home. And it's that selflessness that makes this such a great country in spite of its flaws. And I'm so thankful to live in a part of the country that we deeply appreciate our law enforcement. Because there are a lot of other places right now that don't appreciate our law enforcement. And if you think about it, if you're in the military or the law enforcement, you have voluntarily chosen to put your life on the line because you think you can make a difference for other people. And I've had the privilege of being a reasonably successful businessman in Birmingham now for a long time. And it would not happen. And matter of fact, my patrol officer from a neighborhood is sitting here, and we had a chance that he patrols my neighborhood. This young man right here keeps my neighborhood safe at night. And I thank you for that. We don't have to lock our doors during the day because we live in a safe part of town, and I'm thankful for that. And I think most of the citizens of the city of Birmingham, the greater Birmingham area, appreciate that. And you think about this. Major Struecker put his life on the line. If I said to you right now, can you put a pin on a map of where he was? I'm going to guess 99% of the people in this room could not do that. So they put their lives on the line every day to serve people they don't even know. And to a person, I've heard the military people say, you know, these people that are protesting our country, I will give my very life. So they have the right to do that. These law enforcement officers that in many places are dealing with people that would kill them, would love to kill them, they would put their life in jeopardy to save them. And those are amazing people that don't top the pay scale. Some people in society don't even appreciate what they do, but we do. Young Business Leaders does. The Christian community of Birmingham appreciates what you all do. And we wanted to make sure that you all knew that today. And I've had the privilege to be the one to get to tell you, thank you for what you do. So think about this. These people put themselves in a situation where they're leaving their family behind, some for months, but some for shift where those families don't know for sure they're going to come home. But they do that so we could live in a better Birmingham and a better United States. So we wanted to make sure we said thank you. So what I'd like to do is ask all of our law enforcement officers to please stand. Please, don't be modest. We want to thank you. All of our law enforcement officers, stay standing. I'd like to ask our active military to stand. Anybody here from the military? How about our veterans? Let's get our veterans. Let's give them some applause. All I can say is what you learn when you get into a YBL small group is you learn that in spite of yourself, God loves you. He's given us grace. Grace means we are forgiven for what we don't deserve. And the spirit of YBL does teach us all, hopefully, to be thankful. And so we are thankful. Rob, thank you for this opportunity to give me the privilege of thanking our heroes. And I'd just like to thank you all. And we just hope when you leave today that you can leave knowing that we do appreciate what you do. And I'd like to ask everyone here who did not stand to please make sure you take it upon yourself to find one of these officers and shake their hand and tell them thank you for what you do. So on behalf of Young Business Leaders, thank you. And we'll turn the meeting back over to you now, Mike.
We're going to watch a short video. You got it?
Should be a 2-minute.
So then I'll make a comment after we get through. So hopefully we'll see the screens. Since the audio was so low, you couldn't hear that, just see, I'm going to let Jeff tell you what was going on. It's 30 years ago next month. It's my privilege to introduce Major Struecker this morning, Jeff Struecker, Airborne Ranger, winner of the Silver Star, which is one level below the Congressional Medal of Honor, Bronze Star with V, and 2 oak clusters. He's a man who I admire because he doesn't talk the talk and walk a different walk. He's committed to being a man who walks his talk. My last comment to y'all before he comes up is when I asked my dad, not long before he died, what God used to protect him from being unfaithful to my mom and from compromising his integrity, he said God put faithful men around him that held him accountable. And I thought about my own life, and I thought, yeah, me too. And I thought there's one more piece, and that is he gives you the desire to be with those kind of men. 1 Corinthians 15:33 says, do not be deceived. Bad company corrupt good morals. We all become like the people we run with. So we're free to choose who we run with, but we are going to become like those people. So choose wisely. It's my privilege to introduce Jeff Struecker this morning. Let's give him a warm welcome.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for taking some time out of your schedule to be here this morning. I've been looking forward to this for a long time because I love the YBL team. Rob, thanks for the invite to be back, and for Phil and the rest of the YBL team, thanks for the opportunity to be here. There are a couple of mentors of mine that come out of Birmingham, a couple of warriors that I have looked up to. God placed them in my life almost 25 years ago, and I have looked up to these gentlemen for most of the last 25 years. One of them, unfortunately, has passed on and gone. His name is Dr. Bill Buck. But Billy, thank you for inviting me to become part of your family. And the other one, sadly, was not able to make it today. But there is a legendary warrior in this community by the name of Doug Haskew. And for Doug's family, I look up to that man. He is one of my heroes. I'm going to narrate for you that clip that you just saw but didn't hear. I am assuming that some of you in this room are familiar with the movie Black Hawk Down. That clip deserves a little bit of backstory if you really are going to understand the significance. But what I also want to do is I want to honor the law enforcement, the first responders in this room, especially given the morons all across America that are calling to defund the police, and they think that America would be a better place if there wasn't guys and gals with guns on their hips. I want to grab all of those idiots and take them over to Somalia and say, if you want to know what a society looks like without a military and without law enforcement, I can show you what it looks like, and people die every day in the streets at the hands of evil men. So I personally want to say to the law enforcement and the veterans in this room, thank you guys and gals for what you do for this community. I'll just tell you where I'm going with this talk, and I'm going to be brief because I respect the fact that a lot of you have very busy schedules. But I'm going to tell you right up front, you can't fake genuine, authentic faith. Now, some of you have been to churches, some of you have been around people that claim to have faith, but in reality, when you start to look at the way that they live and listen to the words coming out of their mouth, those things don't line up. And I didn't realize just how important, just how big of a deal that was until immediately after the events of Black Hawk Down. Let me give you a little bit of context for why I was in Somalia, and maybe a little bit of explanation about why Somalia was a little bit different for me than it was the other Rangers on those city streets. I joined the Army while I was still in high school, and all I wanted to do was serve my country. Now, I had a really solid Christian faith. my neighbors came to talk to me when I was 13 years old, and God reached down and grabbed this kid that was in the middle of his sin and pulled me out of it and turned me around and turned me into a very different teenager. And it was this overwhelming, spectacular event. I've never forgot it, and there's never a day that it hasn't made a difference for me. So when I joined the Army, I wanted to serve my country. I wanted to see if I had what it takes to serve with the best. And I also just tried to live out my faith consistently. I tried to share what I believe in Jesus with my buddies. But let me tell you about Army Rangers. These guys are tough. They're smart. They're strong, they're fast. Literally, professional athletes will attempt the Ranger assessment and selection program, and they will not make it. And many of them will say, that's harder than anything that I've ever done in sports in my life. And most of them are exceptionally competent. They've never met a challenge in their life that they haven't been able to overcome just by the strength of their will and by their willing to work hard. So when I talk to my buddies as a young enlisted guy, young sergeant in the Ranger Regiment about my faith, most of them would say, Jeff, that Jesus stuff, you can have it. I don't need it. Because I've got where I am all on my own. And I don't need you, and I don't need your Jesus, so just keep that stuff to yourself. And I understand where they're coming from, but I'm 100% convinced that they're wrong. So, like everybody that I served with, we all wanted to face the ultimate challenge. We all wanted to try the ultimate test in the military, which is to go to war and just see how we would respond. I've been in the Army for a couple of years. When the United States invaded the Republic of Panama, I went down there with this Special Operations Force. In fact, I got notified before the invasion began, and on the night of the invasion, the Ranger Regiment started the whole war by jumping in and doing a parachute assault onto 2 airfields. We seized the airfields and then from there spread out to defeat the Panamanian military. Now, the first night of the operation, we put about 140 aircraft in the skies that night, and we knew there was a good chance that some of them might get shot down. We needed a search and rescue force before the war even began. So I loaded up on airplanes and I flew down to Panama 24 hours before the war kicked off to provide the search and rescue force for the whole operation. After the first night, we started taking down the Panamanian military. But the real reason that my Special Operations Force was in the country, the mission inside the mission was to go capture the country's leader, President Manuel Noriega. After about a week, we had taken down the airfields, we had taken down the military, and then we started chasing Noriega around the country. And eventually, we captured him and sent him to the United States, where he spent the rest of his life, literally, in a jail in Miami, Florida. Now, I got in a couple of firefights in the invasion of Panama. They were actually pretty exciting. It was a lot of adrenaline and a whole lot of gunfire. But those weren't life or death circumstances. They were kind of things that were helping to condition me for the future, but it wasn't one of those overwhelming circumstances for me. So after I got back from Panama, there were still some things about myself, some things about the military that I was trying to figure out. But I do remember thinking to myself, if anything happened to me in Panama, I watched some of my buddies in the Ranger Regiment come under gunfire while they were still in their parachutes making their way to the ground. Some of those guys were killed before they even hit the ground. And I remember thinking, man, if I died in this war, would I have any regrets? And the only thing that came to mind was not asking my high school sweetheart to marry me. So right after the invasion of Panama, I came back to Georgia, back to Columbus, Georgia, and bought a ring and flew home and proposed to my high school sweetheart. Now, we set a date to get married about a year later. She's halfway across the country. I'm in Columbus, Georgia. We're doing all of the final preparations. We're just a couple of weeks away from the wedding day. And I'm in this highly secretive special operations unit. And I convince my commander to let me go across the street and leave our operations center and make a phone call from a payphone. Anybody in this room remember what a payphone looks like? I'm on this payphone across the street. It's late at night, and I wake my fiance up and I say, Dawn, I can't tell you where I'm going, and I'm not authorized to tell you when I'm leaving, and I don't know when I'm going to get back. But I'm pretty sure I'm not going to be in the country on our wedding day. There's a long pause on the phone. And she said, Jeff, if you're going to war again, we need to get married right away. I said, well, first of all, I never actually used the word war. This isn't a secure phone line. I'm just saying I'm not going to be in the country on our wedding day. And I'll never forget her response. Let me tell you how patriotic my wife is. She said, Jeff, don't play games with me. If you get shot, I want the flag. We need to get married right away. And I did what any smart guy in this room will do. I ran back across the street, talked to my commander, convinced him to let me fly home, and arrived in my hometown at noon, got married that afternoon in our family church, and went back to Columbus, Georgia, and off to Kuwait as part of Desert Storm. I'm telling you about Panama and about Desert Storm because I want you to know, by the time I go to Somalia, this is not my first rodeo. I've been around blood. I've been around dead bodies. I've been around plenty of action before this, but I have never before and not since seen the kind of violence and the kind of killing that I saw in Somalia. I realize this is a breakfast. I'm going to be cautious about my language with you this morning. But when you watch the movie Black Hawk Down, those first minute or two, the words that are on the screen, they're trying to tell you the geopolitics of what led to the United States sending this very small surgical force to go over there. And I don't know that the movie can give you the whole context, so let me be brief. There's a drought. The drought has caused a famine, and there is hundreds of thousands, literally 300,000 to 500,000 people that have already starved to death in Kenya and Ethiopia, in Eritrea and in Djibouti. But the epicenter of the drought and the famine is Somalia. Now, Somalia has no government. Somalia has no military. There's no police force in Somalia. And Edmund Burke is right. The only thing that it takes for evil to succeed in the world is for good men and women to do nothing. And that's exactly what happened in Somalia. There was a couple of warlords. These guys are like gang leaders. Literally, they use drugs and they use guns to try to convince people to join their gang. There was a couple of warlords in the capital city that started to try to fight each other, wanted to become the most powerful man in the land. When the United States Marines landed on the beaches of Somalia, December of '92, the only reason that the United Nations goes to Somalia is to hand out food to people, trying to give them a bag of beans and a bag of rice to keep them alive for another day. Listen, what I'm telling you is the country that you live in, we don't go over there to steal their oil. We're not there to take their national resources. We don't want their land. We're just there to help. And in the spring and the summer of '93, the situation deteriorates. And pretty soon, one of these rebel warlords, a guy by the name of Mohammed Farah Aidid, starts to target United Nations workers. He starts to ambush U.S. supply convoys. And in the summer of '93, Aidid murders 24 United Nations workers. I was training in Texas for something totally different. And they called us out of this training exercise and said, stop what you're doing, go straight to the East Coast. We're putting a team together and we're going over there as a result of the United Nations Security Council. They met last night, and what they said is, we need to do something about this guy ID'd. So we're going to send this surgical force over there to capture them if possible. But if not, we're just going to kill them. I'm telling you, you don't send Army Rangers to go hand out food. Our mission is very much kill or capture. So I show up in the city streets of Mogadishu, the capital of Somalia, as a 24-year-old squad leader. I've got 10 men that I'm responsible for. And I've been around blood and I've been around bullets, but not like this. The night that we got off the aircraft, we were met with mortar fire, and it never stopped. It never let up the entire time that we were there. We launched about 7 missions, and we're taking down the leadership of this clan. But we are now months into what we had hoped would only be a 6-week mission. We're months in, and we still don't have ID'd. We still don't have the top-ranking leadership from his clan. And so we get a tip on Sunday afternoon that 2 of the super high-profile bad guys are in the same building at the same time. We've never seen 2 high-profile guys in the same building. But it's the middle of the day. It's the very heart of town that's controlled by ID. This is his neighborhood, and it's broad daylight. And the special operations guys that I served with never, ever do missions during the day. We live on what we call reverse cycle when we go overseas. We live like vampires, basically, and we wait for the sun to go down. Then we go out and do bad things to people, and we scurry back before the sun ever comes up, and nobody even knows that we were there. And there's 2 high-profile bad guys. We're getting a lot of pressure from President Clinton's administration to wrap this thing up and get out of there. And my boss, 2-star general by the name of Bill Garrison, decides to launch the force to go get these guys. Special operators fly in, just like the movie Black Hawk Down. They land on the rooftops and they start to take down the target building. While all of that's going on, other Rangers from my unit go in on Black Hawk helicopters and slide down ropes, and they go to the 4 corners of the target building. Their mission is to keep the whole rest of the city outside of that building while it's being taken down. And we timed this thing in such a way that when the helicopters were pulling off, I would show up about a half a block away with about a dozen Humvees behind me. We would wait that half block away from the target for the call that the building is secure and the bad guys are in our control. We'll drive up the last half block. Everybody jumps on the vehicles, and we want to get out of there in less than 30 minutes. And actually, we did a pretty good job. I mean, for the first 30 minutes, this thing went almost like we'd planned it. Almost. Anybody with a gun on their hip in this room knows that nothing ever goes according to plan when bullets start to fly. And so when the helicopters are going in, when the Rangers are sliding down the ropes, one of those guys missed the rope and landed in the city streets head first. And my commander started calling me saying, "Jeff, I need you to get up here with your vehicles. I need you to get this guy on your Humvees, and I need you to take him back to the surgeon." He was in really bad shape, and he was already unconscious, bleeding from his nose and his ears. And I placed him on a stretcher with no protection around him. He had a couple of special operations medics trying to keep him alive. And I put him on a cargo Humvee. It's like a pickup truck. And then I split my squad in half and put half of my men on a Humvee in front of them and the rest of my guys on a Humvee behind him. And we're going to provide the guns to help him get back to our surgeon safely. I haven't even been on target for 5 minutes when I get the call to go get to Blackburn. I have to fight my way to him to grab him and to put him on this stretcher. And then I called my commander and said, "I'm going to drive him back to the base. I'm going to drop him off. I'll turn right back around. I'll get back out here as fast as I can." But we're already under gunfire. It's pretty significant gunfire, but it's far enough over my head that I'm not that worried about gunfire. I'm more concerned about the serious head and neck injuries that Blackburn sustained when he hit the ground. So I tell the guy who's driving my Humvee to drive at maybe 10 or 15 miles an hour and avoid potholes, avoid debris in the road so we don't do further injury to this guy. We're driving down an alleyway right next to the Target building. And then we turn on to one of the only major roads in Mogadishu. But when I say major road, it's dirt and it's about 10 meters wide. And when we turn the corner, we get shot from every direction at the same time. I've been in lots of gunfights before, but nothing like this. It's coming in from rooftops, it's coming in from doorways, from alleyways, from windows, both directions, guns going every direction. There's rocket-propelled grenades coming across both sides of the street. They're just lobbing hand grenades at us because you can't miss from that direction. And automatic gunfire from every window, every doorway. I had a guy on top of my Humvee with a Browning 50 caliber machine gun who was holding the trigger down and spraying bullets all over the place. And he wasn't being very effective. He wasn't able to hit anybody because he was trying to shoot in too many different directions. So I told him to take his machine gun, take the left side of the vehicle. Because there was another guy sitting right behind me with a machine gun, and I told him to take the right side of the vehicle. You guys pick up all of the bad guys. I'll handle the front of the vehicle, and another guy in the back seat will handle the rear. And right now, what we're doing is we're just trying to keep each other alive long enough to make it back to the base. And down on the right side of the Humvee, hiding in the bushes waiting for us, was a Somali gunman. And when we got right next to him, he noticed Dominic Pilla, who was sitting right behind me. And these two guys shot and killed each other at the same instant. Now, the movie deliberately downplays the blood and the violence. But I'll just tell you that Pilla was shot in the head. He took a massive head wound, and he was dead before his body hit the floorboard. And then everyone around me, everybody in these vehicles started to panic because all of us realized we're not going to make it back to the base. I had to get myself under control. Business leaders, let me remind you of something. When stuff is going really, really bad in your industry, when your business is really struggling, people are looking at you. They might not even tell you that they're looking at you, but they want to know, is the boss okay? Because if the boss is okay, then maybe I'm going to be okay. You do the exact same thing in an airplane when you start to hit turbulence. Everybody looks to the flight attendants to see how scared they are. And after we went through this incredible gunfire, my men are looking at me, and I realized, Jeff, you got to get yourself under control if you want to get your men under control. So I calmly started to direct their fire. I started to try to engage the enemy, and I fought my way back to the base. I don't have time to tell you about all of that. But when I got back to the base, that's when you see this scene from the movie Black Hawk Down. It's chaos back there. The surgeon is running to get to Todd Blackburn. And the medics are pulling Dominic Pilla's dead body off of the back. And people are scurrying everywhere. And I remember getting off of those vehicles and thinking, God, I should be dead right now. All of us should be dead. How did we just survive that kind of enemy fire? And that's when my platoon leader walked up to me and he said, hey, Jeff, we just had a second helicopter go down. Now, I didn't even know the first one went down. I was fighting for my life out there. He said, we already put the search and rescue force in at the first crash site. Now, this great aviator from the state of Alabama, Mike Durant, is crashed in the city streets, and we don't have anybody left, Jeff. So I need you to get back on the Humvees. And I need you to go out to the Durant crash site and see if anybody's alive out there. When he walked away, just like you see in this scene, one of those special operators came up to me and he said, hey, Sergeant, if you're going to go back out in those city streets tonight, don't leave your men in the back of that Humvee sitting in all of that blood. He said, man, that will really mess them up. So I sent the rest of my guys, go get some more fuel, go get some more ammunition. We're going back out in these city streets as fast as we can. But I pulled this one Humvee off to the side, and without running water, I just used buckets and my bare hands. I started cleaning up the blood off the back of this vehicle. And just like you heard from Mike, our MC today, This is the most terrifying moment of my life, and I am not at all embarrassed to tell you. Every fiber of my being was saying, Jeff, this is a suicide mission. Don't go back out there. My first thoughts were, my men, you've already lost one guy. He was sitting just a few inches away from you. I don't know if anybody survived where those 2 helicopters went down, but the only guy killed in action was on those vehicles with you. And if you drive back out there, every one of your men are going to die tonight. There's no way around this, Jeff. I was thinking about my wife, who she and I had been trying for 3 years to have a baby. And she wrote me a letter in the mail saying that she was pregnant with our first child when I got to Somalia. And I was also thinking, I know. I don't think, I absolutely know I'm going to die. And at the back of that Humvee, I did simply what any man or any woman of faith in this room would do. I just simply put it all in God's hands. Now, I'm not saying that I argued with God or even negotiated with him. He's the sovereign creator of the universe. I got nothing to negotiate with. I just simply said, God, I'm scared. God, I'm in trouble. God, I need your help. And at the back of that Humvee, he started to remind me of this grand exchange that happened when I was 13 years old. Let me explain this to you. He started reminding me, Jeff, you said that you were trusting me with your soul. Did you really mean that? Because if you really meant that, Jeff, then your life is in my hands, and nothing and no one can snatch you out of it. Nothing can happen to you apart from my plan, apart from my will. If you really meant what you said, Jeff, then I will walk with you into the valley of the shadow of death. And that was the moment. It was like a light switch went off for me when I started to think, there's really only one of 2 ways this thing can turn out. Maybe I survive. Maybe I'm able to go home to my family in Georgia. But if not, I know exactly where I'm going to spend eternity. If I get shot in Mogadishu, Somalia, before my body hits the city streets, I know without a shadow of a doubt, my soul will be with my Creator in heaven. And for me, that was the moment. From the rest of the night, it didn't matter what happened to me. I stopped thinking about myself. I stopped thinking about my safety. And all I could think about is my men and getting out into those city streets to try to get my buddies out of there and bring them back home alive. When I got off the Humvees, 9 o'clock the next morning, my Ranger buddies, those ones who said, I don't care about your faith, Jeff, I don't want to talk about it, they were waiting for me. I was literally the last vehicle to make it back in. I'm one of the last guys to come out of that firefight alive. And my buddies grabbed me as soon as I got off the Humvee. And they said, Jeff, I watched you last night in the city streets. I listened to your voice over the radio. You and I have the same training. We have the same experiences, but I'm telling you, you have something that I don't have. And I don't even know what it is, but all I know is I want what you've got, Jeff. And for the next 24 hours, I had guys waking me up in the middle of the night saying, I watched you. It was so significant that I need to know right now about your faith. The moment that God really grabbed my attention, the moment that he really redirected my future was immediately after the bullets stopped flying. That's the moment that I started to sense God calling me into the ministry so that I could reach warriors and prepare them for eternity. And I'm going to say it to you again. You can't fake authentic faith. Listen, some of you have been to church. Some of you have heard your parents or a preacher tell you that if you will recite this prayer, if you'll walk down this aisle, if you'll sign your name to this card, then Jesus will wash away all of your sins. Don't get me wrong. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that language. It's just missing the most important part. There's an exchange that happens here. Your life for Jesus' life. And what Jesus did for you on the cross, what he did for me, what he did for all sinners all time, anyone who will genuinely come to him in faith, is he said, I will take your faults, I will take your mistakes, I will take your failures, and I will pay for them, because the wages of sin is death. Somebody is going to have to die for this. And either you pay for it or I pay for it. And if I pay for it, I'm asking for one thing in exchange. I'm asking for your soul. In fact, Jesus' own words, anyone who's not willing to leave his father and mother and brother and sister and even his spouse or his own life is not worthy of me. So what he's calling some of you in this room to do today is to make this exchange. To say, Jesus, I've heard the stories. And I actually, when I was a little boy or a little girl, I walked down the aisle of a church and I did the thing that you told me to do, but it really didn't make any difference in my life. I'm standing in front of you today to tell you, you can't fake genuine, authentic faith. It is so real, it is so powerful that when the chips are down and when life is hard, people notice there's something different inside that man that I can't explain and that I don't have. And whatever that thing is, I want that thing. So in just a second, what I want to do is I want to pray for you. I want to pray first for some people in this room who may have heard this story again and again. And to you, Jesus is nothing more than a historical figure. He is no different than Abraham Lincoln or George Washington, just some guy that you read about in a book. Today, I want you to have an intimate encounter with the creator of the universe, the one that loves you so much that he would go on a suicide mission to rescue you. And in just a second, I'm going to pray that somebody's life is radically changed in this room, like God radically changed me at 13 years old. But I'm also going to pray for the business leaders. The reason I came back to YBL this year to be with you is because I'm convinced the leaders in this room can change your businesses, can change your community, that this city will change this state, and this state would change the country and the world if people would just see good men and women who have something inside of them that is so different that when life is scary and when the chips are down, they can handle whatever life throws at them because you don't do it alone. You've got the creator of the universe, the one who loves you and says, I'll never leave you. I'll never forsake you. No matter how dark, no matter how bad it gets, I will be with you. So would you just bow your heads and would you let me pray for you right now? God in heaven, no one came to this room today by accident. You brought them here. And God, you brought them here not to hear a story from Jeff. You didn't bring them here so that they could hear a war story. You brought them here because you wanted to speak to them. You wanted to touch their hearts. Father, first and beyond anything else that happens next, I'm praying for the soul of somebody in this room who's heard the story again and again. But if they were absolutely honest with themselves, if tonight was the night and they were certain that they would not see the sun come up tomorrow, they couldn't say with total assurance that I know I'm going to be with my Creator in heaven. In fact, they would probably say, I'm not really sure. I hope I will, but I'm not really sure. God, for the guys and gals in this room that are playing Russian roulette with eternity, would you cause them right now to nail this one down? Because there's no promise that any of us are going to leave this room and make it to our office or make it to our next appointment. So God, would you help them to urgently nail this one down right now? Would you help somebody in this room simply say, God, forgive me. God, I am a sinner. God, I cannot undo my past and I can't make my mistakes go away. But I believe you love me. I believe you didn't want to leave me in my sin. So I believe you sent your son, Jesus, to come to earth to do the ultimate sacrifice, to give his perfect, sinless life up in exchange for me. In fact, the way the book of Romans describes this, while I was yet in my sin, you loved me and you sent your son Jesus to die for me. And so right here I am, God. This is just between me and you. Nobody else in this room can see it. Nobody else knows it. But I'm asking you to change me. I'm asking you to do something inside of me that I can't do for myself. Would you turn me into a new man? Would you turn me into a new woman right now? And God, from this moment forward, I follow you. Anywhere you want me to go, anything you want me to do, I'll do it. God in heaven, would you hear that prayer? Would you honor that prayer? Would you do for somebody in this room what you've done for me and many others who sincerely came to you in genuine faith and not just some simple head knowledge about a guy they read about in a book a long time ago? Father, for my brothers and sisters who know Christ, who have been changed by Christ, will you help them to live bold, especially during hard times? Because that's when everyone's looking and they want to know, is this faith thing real? And the way that it's most obvious is when it's dangerous, when it's difficult, when the chips are down. So would you raise up strong, bold men and women of faith in this room who will go out and live different, and their neighbors, their coworkers, their family will say, you have something. I don't even know what it is, but I know I want it. So God, have your way right now. Do in the hearts of people in this room whatever brings your son Jesus glory and the good of these people. I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you very much, guys and gals, for the chance to be with you. I'm going to turn things over to Rob, but I hope that you have a great day. God bless.
Well, brothers and sisters, I'm grateful that you all have been here, law enforcement, military veterans. It is a privilege to have you with us. Again, I'm Rob Jenin. I'm the Director for Young Business Leaders, and I'm just very encouraged by what I just heard and very challenged. I want to talk to you a little bit. First of all, Jeff apologizes. He's got to get to another engagement tonight, and he needs to fly out of Atlanta at noon. Any of you have done that trip know that he's cutting it close. So he left me some of his cards. If some of you want to connect with him at some point, you can come up to me, and I'll make sure you can get in touch with him. Jeff also, thanks to Billy Buck, who is here, his dad and mom worked on this little booklet, Bulletproof Faith. If you want to read more about his story, that's why these are on your table. And if you think this might encourage somebody in your life, please take that with you as well to maybe share with them. Now, I'm going to just quickly, YBL staff, do y'all have can you go find like a bucket or a basket or a large shoe for our drawing? That would be helpful. Okay, so if you guys see this card, this is our comment and response card here this morning. We are so glad that you're here. We also want today to be not just the one-time experience of something that was good that you went to at the Vestavia Country Club. We're really praying that this will be a beginning of something for you, or another step in a journey that God is taking you on in your spiritual growth and walk with Him. I pray for a number of you, this might have been the first day you stopped playing games with God and you said, Father, I want to really walk with you, just as Jeff challenged us to do. So if you would take these cards, please fill out your information here. We're not going to give your information to anyone. This is just for us to be able to connect with you and help you and serve you. Another thing I'd like is here at the bottom it says, we invite your comments. If you are an active duty police officer, would you write police, or if you're a deputy, write deputy, or if you're a military veteran, would you just write veteran down here on the comment piece? Because we have people who are going to follow up after this breakfast. And if you're a businessman, we want to have business people to follow up with you. I've got a number of chaplains who are here from the police department and from the sheriff's department. So we would like to be able to connect with you and encourage you appropriately. So please write that down there. Your information at the top, and then we're gonna do a drawing. So this is your entry for the drawing. We have 3 prizes this morning. We have an office chair from OFC Workscapes. We have a $50 Trader Joe's gift card, and we have a $100 gift card to Inverness Golf and Country Club, which is kind of a advertisement too for our YBL golf tournament, which is coming up November the 6th. So, but the most important thing here is we want this to be a first step for you. So it says here in the card, how can we be of service to you? If you made a commitment in this room, as Jeff encouraged and challenged you to, that this is the first time that you decided, you know what, I'm really going to follow Jesus. I'm going to make that exchange that Jeff talked about. Please check this box right here. And even if you're just in process, but there's nothing more important you're going to do today than to settle this. It says, I would like more information about a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. And so that is, if you want somebody to talk to you today about this and to help you process what just happened, we want to make sure that we can help you do that. And in fact, don't leave the room before coming up and even talking with some of us. There are people who are at the heads of your tables who'd like to talk to that and speak to that in your life. Secondly, some of you may still be wrestling. You're like, you know what, this is new to me, and I'm not sure, but I have questions about this. Is this really a path that I can walk? And is Jesus really real? And was he all the things that I've heard, or I haven't heard much, but you want to investigate this? Then sign the second box right here. Mark the second box. Says, I would like a one-on-one meeting to investigate the claims of Jesus Christ. The third part here, it says, I'm interested in finding a mentor or being a mentor. 68% of business people all across the board say they wish they had a mentor. And it is just a simple fact that we need people speaking into our lives who can give us wisdom for the future, to know what we are supposed to do and how to handle situations as they come up. If you're interested in connecting as a mentor, getting a mentor, please check that box, and our mentor committee will meet to discuss that. If you would like to potentially serve as a mentor in the life of another person, please check that box, and we'll have our committee meet with you and vet you and kind of explain the process of being a mentor as well. Then the last box here says, I'm interested in a small group Bible study. YBL's got about 30 small groups. We got about 8 or 9 older men's groups as well. We had a couple of guys joke about the fact that they started with YBL 40 years ago. I'm so grateful. YBL is a multi-generational ministry. So whether you are 21 and just starting your career, or you're 61, we need a band of brothers. We need a community around us. And for you ladies, we have a women's business leaders ministry, and we can get you connected to that as well. So this is all about having community. You don't want to try to build community when a crisis happens. You need to build friendships and relationships in your life that really are about the most important things, about God's word and about talking about the real stuff beneath the stuff. And that's what these small groups are about. So if you're interested in being part of a group, we would love to connect with you. We'll be doing some things and launching kind of an introductory group to help get you acquainted with that. So please mark that. And then, I've just listed, best days, times, and locations for that. So please go ahead and finish filling that out. And as you finish filling that out, we're going to have some of you who've helped this morning, if you'd be willing to come around and collect these cards from the tables. If you can just fan out and collect these cards. Table leaders, if you can kind of just aggregate the cards at the head of your table, that would be super helpful so we can expedite this process. And then what we're going to do is take those cards and we're going to shuffle them up. And my friend Mike Williams, who's our MC, is going to impartially draw 3 cards for the special drawings. While you guys are doing that too, I do want to just make you aware of the last kind of community event YBL has for the year is November 6th. It's the first Monday of November at Inverness Country Club. I know a couple of you have already got teams signed up for this, but it's the YBL 34th Annual Golf Tournament. And so if some of you are golfers and interested, I've found that one of the things is that as men, a lot of times we don't do things socially unless there's a cause or a reason for it. So we would love for this to be an excuse and a reason for you to spend 5 hours in the company of other men and to be encouraged together. So if you're interested in that, you can come and talk to me afterwards or find out more at ybl.org. All right, at this time, I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to Mike, who's going to help us with our drawing. It'll be just a minute or two as we're gathering together all the cards.